Former Chief Executive Peter Moyo in an open letter to shareholders today after a court ruled last month that he should be reinstated. The country's second largest insurer has appealed the High Court ruling ordering Moyo's temporary reinstatement and has said that it will not allow him to return to work because of their breakdown in relations. Arabile Gumede has been following that story and he joins us now. Shareholders unhappy with this matter dragging on for longer than it should.
Desiree, I think I may have even been wearing the same suit when
we last spoke.
This termination actually initially occurred early on in June, right? And it's based on the exact same premise, the exact same story. Just bring out the exact statement here that they've actually just said that they don't believe that the relationship can actually continue between Peter Moyo and themselves. That's Old Mutual and its shareholders then. And they just believe that there's an untenable relationship between them. So they certainly have to then proceed in terminating this. They have said that they're not disrespecting the courts. They're just doing this after a whole lot of legal advice. Whether it's the correct legal advice, having already lost one fight with Peter Moyo is certainly going to be a question at hand.
It's crazy, isn't it, that corporates have so much standard operating procedures and rules that govern their operations, and yet they can't make such decisions. Yeah,
little nooks and crannies that are found in situations like this, right, where people find a little way to perhaps flout or perhaps go through the law. I'm not necessarily saying that this is the case here. I'm just saying that, generally with regards to corporate standings, that seems to be the case. Even though you have so many codes, you have the Companies Act, you have so many rules that they need to abide by. And I suppose the issue at hand here also plays into third-party contracts and just how you may be related to another party and how you're influenced by another party. And of course, let's remember that Peter Moyo's standing with the company that he co-founded, which is NMT Capital, is the reason we're standing here today. And the reason why he's perhaps fought this is because of the relationship between the chairman of Old Mutual with Rothschild, which is also then a company that Old Mutual.
Conflict.
Exactly. So that conflict of interest is certainly something that still remains at play. And I have no doubt in my mind that Peter Moyo will continue to fight this one.
The legal representative of Peter Moyo, Eric Mabuza, quoted as having responded to this latest decision, saying it's corporate madness.
It is. And I mean, in many instances, some would say, why would you go for round two? Why not let this play out in the courts? Why not wait out the decision by the courts, which is also expected out in August, and then take it from there? I suppose the sentiment that Old Mutual are trying to share in this email is that it just does not work for the company to move forward with a relationship where the CEO is no longer trusted by the shareholders. But now, the problem with that is that you're doing it under the cloud of this court case. Whereas if perhaps you had waited for the court case to then finish, all proceedings to then come to a head, and then say, listen, we would like to end the relationship with you because unfortunately it is not tenable in this scenario. If that happens to be the case, then let's proceed at that stage. I'm not sure, I'm not confident that this is perhaps the right step by Old Mutual, perhaps jumping the gun a little bit, but it certainly is one that they say they've received legal advice on, and perhaps it will move in a better direction for them.
Well, it certainly is an important story as you see the movement in the share price of Old Mutual, and also it stands to be a huge monetary loss for Peter Moyo should it go through.
No, certainly. And I mean, look, he's won round one, so that certainly does stand him in good stead, right? But the share price is down is up rather a third of a percent today. But I don't think that isn't necessarily based on just this move. And I think what investors will try to do is wait it out and see exactly what happens with this. Does it actually change the operations of Old Mutual? Investors will probably feel not necessarily, right? And not yet. I think the more interesting move will be who takes over.
So what are the concerns of the shareholders?
Well, it is exactly if this becomes the key factor, the key important point, the key focal point for the company.
Which it has been in recent times.
Exactly. And unfortunately, if this continues to drag out, then it does mean that you've lost focus on the rest of the business and how the business actually operates. And now you're fighting internal battles, and those certainly don't help to move the company forward. They've just moved away from a split off, of course, from their international counterparts. So they're trying to find their way, and this is not going to help them in the long run.
I've seen in recent reports that the directors, members of the board, are also starting to speak out about this. Is that a clever move?
Perhaps not, but what it does do is send out clear direction, I suppose, right? And it clearly tells you which side things sort of stand, as opposed to just getting continued statements. The difference in this regard is that if the directors do speak, it tells you exactly where Peter Moyo stands when it comes to the company. So for Peter Moyo's sake, it's to try and find a way to amicably find a resolution to this. That amicable resolution may actually be within the courts itself, actually, to ensure that he isn't wrong and doesn't suffer a major legal consequence as you know.
Do we know where the NMT shareholding stands?
At present, it is at around 30% or so. So that's how much Old Mutual will then have of NMT
so that
itself.
Will remain.
Indeed. So for now, it currently remains. Whether that is a relationship that will then be, expunged a little bit later on and reviewed, that's certainly going to be of question. And then what happens with the relationship with Rothschild? Because that has also been brought into question, right? So it's like a maths equation.
If you say this is conflict, then let's be consistent.
Exactly. So, but the question then becomes, what happens to the conflicts of interest rule within the Companies Act, which under both premise has actually been informed to the company. So the company knew of both relationships. So what happens in future when a conflict of interest arises? Even if you tell the company that I have one, would it change the way the business is run?
Do you know if Peter Moyo has responded?
He hasn't as yet. We will continue to try and get some word from him, perhaps, and we'll see if he continues to, outright say. But I can bet your bottom dollar right now he's not going to take this one lying down either, knowing the kind of man he is.
I love how he keeps smiling throughout the
entire
turmoil.
Process. He does not mind, and I suppose it comes with experience, knowing where you stand and just being confident in your abilities. My issue and my biggest problem, I suppose, becomes what happens after this for Peter Moyo. If he doesn't stay at Old Mutual, what becomes his next job?
Thank you so much for talking to us, Arabile Gumede. We'll hope to get more on that story as it unfolds.